If there is no support from the United States, we will retreat step by step, Zelensky said in the interview with the Washington Post. Other important points from the president. We have lost 6 months, we cannot afford to lose any more time. Ukraine cannot be a political issue between US parties. If Ukraine falls, Putin will divide the world. We are trying to find some way to not retreat. We have stabilized the situation thanks to some smart moves of our military. If the fronts remain stable, Ukraine will be able to arm and train new brigades in the rear for a new counteroffensive later this year. The president also emphasized the importance of strengthening Ukraine's air defense. Additionally, regarding attacks on Russian oil refineries, he stated, "We have used our drones, so no one can tell us that you cannot do it." Hey, my name is Alex, and this is a quick update on the Russian-Ukrainian war from the perspective of someone living within it. At the same time, in the interview with the New York Times, John Wu, Taiwan foreign minister, stated that halting American weapon supplies to Ukraine would embolden China in its aggression against Taiwan, and bolstered Beijing's propaganda portraying the United States as an unreliable partner. According to him, China is already spreading disinformation, highlighting the Russian version of the war, including the idea that NATO expansion forced Putin to attack Ukraine, and that ultimately the United States does not intend to support Ukraine. John Wu believes that if Russia can occupy a large part of Ukraine and declare victory, it will be seen as a victory for all authoritarian states because Russia, China and North Korea and Iran are now linked. And another interview, this time with the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, for Die Welt. Europe is entering a pre-war era, he declared. I know it sounds devastating, especially for the younger generation, but we need to get used to the fact that a new era has begun, the pre-war era. I am not exaggerating. With each passing day, this becomes clearer, noted Tusk. He added that the war is no longer a concept from the past. It is real, and it is started earlier than 2 years ago. The most alarming thing at the moment is that literally any scenario is possible. We haven't seen such situations since 1945, the Polish Prime Minister affirmed. Meanwhile, last night Russia carried out another missile drone attack on Ukraine. According to official sources from Ukraine, our defense forces destroyed 9 Shad drones. A total of 20 such drones launches were recorded that night. Here, for example, are the fragments of a Russian X-101 missile and Russian-Iranian kamikaze UAV in Vinnytsia region, shot down by Ukrainian air defense forces on March 29th. Here is another one, a downed Russian-Iranian kamikaze UAV labeled E-1852, planted in a field, a result of the Ukrainian mobile group's operation. It is notable that the Russians have started actively painting drones in black. Such a drone is much harder to detect and spot in the sky at night. Therefore, saying that Russians don't learn anything, as various experts often allow themselves to claim, is not accurate. For instance, on March 29, the Ukrainian air defense shot down a modified Russian air-launched cruise missile X-101, which had a duet warhead. By examining the fragments of the downed missile, it was determined that the addition of an additional warhead payload, in addition to the conventional one, occurred due to the reduction in the size of the fuel tank. This means a reduction in the flight range of the X-101, but in the event of a decrease from 5.5 thousand kilometers to a hypothetical 2.2 thousand kilometers, this does not have much significance. The width of Ukraine at its widest point is about 1.3 thousand kilometers. Russia is testing all new ways to destroy everything within its reach. It is reported that for the first time Russia has used a heavy aircraft bomb ODAB-1500 in Ukraine. It most likely struck the village of Velika Parasivka in Sumy direction. This is thermobaric bomb from Soviet times, which releases a flammable liquid in the form of an aerosol, approximately 10 meters before hitting the target, after which it ignites. Such a munition, compared to conventional one, has a significantly greater destruction power. And the widespread use of Russian-guided aerial bombs over the past 6 months is no longer a surprise to anyone. However, this doesn't make these bombs any less dangerous, as Ukraine lacks effective means to counter this weaponry. All hopes are pinned on the F-16s that are expected to arrive soon. The scale of Russians' use of those munitions is evidenced by numerous videos of dropped bombs lying scattered across fields, and these are only the ones that someone happened to witness and wanted to capture on video. Considering that a significant portion of these bombs do manage to reach their intended targets and explode. Particularly active during the recent attack, the Russians have targeted the destruction of Ukraine's energy infrastructure. For instance, the Zmyivska thermal power plant was virtually completely destroyed as a result of recent enemy missile attack. None of its power units are currently operational. Now, considering the situation, instead of several large power plants in Ukraine, there will be hundreds of small ones to protect against shelling, announced Andriy Herus, the head of the Energy Committee. When we have hundreds of small power plants, it will be practically impossible or very expensive to shell such objects with missiles, he added. Meanwhile, the Ukraine continues actively constructing fortifications both on the border with Russia and Belarus as well as in the frontline territories. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has demonstrated the development of engineering and fortification structures, this time in Sumy region. It is worth paying special attention to this region, as the situation there is quite complex and manipulative, especially from the perspective of foreign media. Lately, this region has been under intense enemy shelling, which includes the use of UAVs, aircraft, missile, artillery and even FPV drones. Alongside this, sabotage and reconnaissance groups are actively operating, engaging in destruction, looting and even killings. Ukrainian units stationed on the border are monitoring the situation closely and making every effort to prevent such attempts. And for completeness, on the opposite end of the country, somewhere in the Zaporizhia direction, Ukraine has installed only their 11,000 Dragon's teeth. In turn, the Russians are also strengthening sectors of the border in the Belgorod, Kursk and Bryansk regions. In Kursk, they plan to relocate units of the 5th Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade. Furthermore, as the time passes, the Russians continue to fortify the Crimea Bridge against attack by surface drones. In image from March 28, construction and drilling work can be observed, likely related to reinforcement defensive structure near the bridge. The red line marks surface barriers, booms. In war, both sides seek ways to deceive the enemy. So the Russians brought mock-ups of their soldiers to the Tavria direction. It is noteworthy that for some reason all the mannequins are red in color. Here is a comment from the commander of the UAV unit that captured all this activity. So here it is, the Red Army. The Russians sneaked into the forest at night with some mannequins. They were in hurry to unload. Now they will play toy soldiers. Oh, here they are, already dressed up, launching them on boards. Such fun for the Russians in the forest. Also, Ukrainian weapon mock-ups have repeatedly appeared in photos and videos, often of high quality. From a distance of 50 meters, the mock-ups are practically indistinguishable from the original. This was noticed by the Telegraph publication. The publication refers to 32-year-old Mikhail Roman, who bore us photo on social media. The real Patriot system cost about $1 billion, while the man and his team plans to make a mock-up for $10,000. Targets like the Patriot are top priority for the Russians, and they are willing to use any of their missiles to destroy them. And here we have another example of Russian camouflage. I understand this is some kind of training for reacting to drones, although I doubt that from the height the operator wouldn't recognize that it is a Russian soldier. What do you think? Meanwhile, in Russia, the propagandists are up to their usual topics. This time they are treating Britain with nuclear dust. They say that after the war all Russians should be judged. Excuse me, who will judge us? Some British. Is it a country that will be buried under a radioactive wave by that time? To illustrate the difference, here is an example of an average Ukrainian. Even while on duty, this person planted and grows vegetables where it seems impossible. There is no desire to destroy or threaten. Instead, as a normal human being, he wants to grow, build and create. And regarding the situation on the front, increased combat continues in Chasov Yar's direction, near Bogdanivka, east of Listvenny Forest and in Ivanivka. Video footage shows the bombing of Chasov Yar by Russian forces. Avdiivka sector on the front. Russian troops continue assault operations towards Central and Kazberova Street in Berdychiv. In Pervomaisky, the enemy has advanced along Persha-Trevneva, Shkilna, Mira and Central streets, up to 450 meters wide and 1.4 kilometers deep. On the Velikonovoselivsky direction, the Ukrainian armed forces repelled all attack north of Priyutny. Footage shows the separate presidential brigade of the Ukrainian armed forces, which halted the enemy's assault group here. The intensity of Russian movements on the Zaporizhia direction has also increased. They mostly operate in small groups and identify weak points in our units' positions, preparing for large-scale assault actions. They also excel in ambushes and FPV. Yesterday's documented losses. Russian Federation 40 units, Ukrainian Armed Forces 16 units. The ratio is 1 to 2.2 in favor to Ukraine. The number of vehicles damaged, destroyed using FPV is impressive. And here are some examples from the Russian charts about the realities of the war. I'll give you one quote. We have no one left to complain. Out of the 2,500 in the regiment, only 300 remain. We have filled up with contractors. As far as I understand, they are talking about the assault on Simkyivka. Or here is another one, Russian talking about the 71st Guard Motor Rifle Regiment. Yes, they are right, the 71st Regiment is ghost. Why? Because people disappear without a trace there. And I really wouldn't want you to get the impression that this is a one-sided process, since unfortunately Ukrainians are not immortal either and die every day, while politicians in high offices cannot agree on aid to Ukraine. And that wraps up today's video. If you found this information helpful or somehow insightful, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye!